بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ومولاي يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ومولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله فاز من اعتصم بحبلكم وأمين من لجي إلى حسنكم يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع لذنوبنا وتبيب نفوسنا أبا القاسم محمد والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. وفقنا الله وإياكم بعلم وعمل صالح إن شاء الله بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. Respected elders, scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost for giving us the opportunity to gather once again to congregate physically in the centers and to commemorate the Shahadat of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. And of course it's a pleasure for me to serve you once again physically, and of course take care of yourselves in these dire times. Tonight being the night of the second holy Imam, you find that the discussion tonight, I want to focus on three different areas surrounding his life in particular. Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, I want to speak of his identity, number one. Secondly, I want to speak about his brave character, his shuja'ah, his courage that was demonstrated in different aspects of his life. And then thirdly, I want to answer the question as to how he participated in Karbala without even being there in presence. When we examine his life in terms of his identity, you find that when you refer to the books of the riwayat of the scholars, and of course the expansion of these riwayat of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam that they engaged with, you find that there are many narrations which speak about the fada'il of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. And it's usually coupled with Imam al-Husayn salawatullahi wa salamu alayhima. You find that one of the fadila of the fada'il of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam is that he is seen and recognized as the son of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih. And this relationship that is depicted, even by historians, that he is seen as the son of the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, shows that it is not a relationship that is depicted in which the Holy Prophet came to his people and said, I love my sons. For example, Imam Hassan and Imam Husayn. This wasn't a title of affection. This was a title to show the character and the nobility of Imam Hassan alayhi salam as well as Imam Husayn salawatullahi wa salamu alayhima. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So you find from amongst the fada'il of Imam Hassan alayhi salam is that he is considered to be the son of Rasulullah. When you look at, for example, his relationship with Imam Ali alayhi salam, the relationship between the Holy Prophet of Islam and Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam is a relationship of brotherhood. Imam alayhi salam was a young child when the Prophet adopted him. There's a good 30 years difference between the Prophet of Islam and Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. You find that Rasulullah adopts the Imam alayhi salam, so you would think that this is a relationship between a father and a son. But later on, as they grow up, as the Imam grows up, that relationship becomes a relationship of brotherhood. That the Imam begins to interact with the Holy Prophet, or rather the Holy Prophet begins to interact with the Imam as a brother, as a right-hand man, as the chief commander of the Holy Prophet of Islam. But when it comes to his relationship with his two sons, the two sons of Imam alayhi salam, it's not a relationship between a grandfather and grandsons. It is a relationship between a father and a son. And this is seen as an excellence that was held amongst Imam Hassan alayhi salam as well as Imam Husayn alayhi salam. So I'll give you a few examples. You find, for example, famous narration, the Imam alayhi salam, Imam Hassan, he walks into the Masjid, Masjid al-Nabi, when he's a young child. When he walks into the Masjid, Rasulullah is giving a sermon, a majlis. Then when he sees his son or his grandson, Imam Hassan, he comes off his mimbar, he stops the sermon, and then he embraces Imam Hassan alayhi salam. He embraces him and he shows public affection. Here scholars came forward and said, why does the Holy Prophet show public affection? Two reasons were given. Number one, it was to fight the culture that was existing where fathers would not show public affection to their children. Fathers in the time of Jahiliyyah, because of their hardened hearts, they would not show affection. Even privately, they would not show affection to their children. Rasulullah tried to break this culture and said to them that it's perfectly fine when a father, for example, hugs and kisses his children in public. This is good. It builds the character of the child. Secondly, it was to show the people the nobility of Imam al-Hassan, that this person in history will not be a normal person in history, that he is a man of character, that he is a man of infallibility, and what he does will impact the rest of history that is to come. So here, Rasulullah begins to show public affection towards Imam Hassan alayhi salam. What's interesting is that in the Battle of Siffin, now there's two reports coming from two different angles. I'll share both of them. They say in the Battle of Siffin, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam comes towards Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, his son. He says to his son, Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, he says that there is a scuffle in the front lines. There is a battle that is brewing. I want you to go and fight in the front lines. Prepare yourself and go and defend and represent me. Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, he boots himself. Yes, he puts on the armor. He prepares himself. He takes a battalion with him. He goes towards the front lines. When he goes into the front lines, he fights, and he fights valiantly, bravely. He then comes back. When he comes back, he's now exhausted. He's tired. His body has been inflicted with wounds, blood flowing from these wounds. He's about to rest. As soon as he rests, the Imam alayhi salam approaches him again. Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, Ya Muhammad, Ya Bunayya, get up. There is a scuffle that is brewing in the right flank. I want you to go and fight in the right flank. He says, my father, grant me respite. I'm tired, I'm exhausted. I have injuries in my body. He says, Ya Muhammad, Ya Bunayya, get up and get ready. You are to represent me in the right flanks. Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, again, he suits up, he boots up, and then he goes towards the right flanks. He fights, he defends valiantly, and then he comes back. Now you can imagine his state just after two battles. He's completely exhausted. He has now further wounds on his body. He now has, for example, blood flowing from different areas of his body. As soon as he sits down to rest, he's exhausted. Imam comes towards him. He says, Ya Bunayya, there is a scuffle in the left side, in the left flank. Prepare yourself because I'm sending you to the front lines. He says, my father, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I can't fight anymore. Yes, my body is bruised, my body, for example, is injured, it's wounded. I need some days of rest and then I will fight and represent you. He says, but Muhammad, you are my son. You need to represent me. Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, they say there was a level of ambiguity in his heart. He says, the reason why you're sending me is because I'm your son. But Hassan is also your son. Husayn is also your son. Why don't you send them? He says, Ya Muhammad, you don't understand. You are my son. Where are they? Whereas they are the sons of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. He says, Ya Muhammad, you are my hands. They are my eyes. The hands have to protect the eyes. This is from one perspective. The other narrations explain that no. The Imam alayhi salam, sometimes he would send Imam Hassan alayhi salam to fight, and sometimes, a majority of the times, he would hold the Imam back. Why would Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam not send his son Imam Hassan alayhi salam to fight? Well, you have to understand, the Battle of Siffin was one of the final battles of the Imam alayhi salam. A few months later, within a year later, he would have been struck on the head by the hands of Ibn Muljim. So the Imam had to, for example, make sure that Imam Hassan alayhi salam wouldn't be fighting in the front lines constantly, all the time, because he was the Imam after him. Just like how Imam Sajjad alayhi salam in the Battle of Karbala, Imam Husayn was insistent that he was not to go and fight, because there was a greater responsibility in their hands, and that was to stay back and to protect the religion of Islam, preserve the message of Rasulullah. So Imam Hassan alayhi salam, sometimes he would go and fight, but majority of the times he would stay back. Now there are other reports which says that those times that the Imam alayhi salam, when he went and he fought valiantly. They say one day, during the battles of Siffin, during the days of Siffin, he came to Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says to his son, he says, my son, go and fight and defend me and represent me. He gives him a spear. When he gives him a spear, he takes the spear, he takes a battalion with him, and he fights valiantly. And he comes back. When he comes back with his head hung low. He says, my father, I fought the best I could. But there was no way for me to break the ranks of the enemy, to penetrate the lines of the enemy. He says, my son, you did well. It's not a problem. Give me the spear. He takes the spear and he gives it to Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. He says, Ya Hassan, go and fight. Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, when he enters the battlefield, he fights and he fights with valiance. And then he comes back. When he comes back, the companions, they see that his spear is flowing with blood, fresh blood. And then they found out that Imam Hassan alayhi salam fought and he killed from amongst the enemies and he broke the enemy ranks. He penetrated into the lines of the enemies. Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, when he saw that the spear was flowing with blood, he was ashamed. Yakhjal. The riwayah says, huwa yakhjal, that he was in a state of embarrassment and he was shamed. So he turned to his father, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, with his head hung low, and he says, my father, forgive me. Imam Hassan was able to be successful, whereas I failed. Amir al-Mu'mineen says to him, my son, it's nothing to worry about. There is a difference between you and him. He says, what's the difference between me and Imam Hassan alayhi salam? He says, you are my son, whereas he is the son of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. So you find, for example, throughout the different narrations, one of the fada'il that is highlighted of Imam Hassan alayhi salam is that he is seen and considered to be the son of Rasulullah. Ibn Abil Hadid al-Mu'tazili, a famous Sunni scholar, he has written an exegesis of Nahjul Balagha, Sharh Nahjul Balagha. It's over 20 volumes. There's even discussion today whether he was a Shia or not. And there's no doubt that he was not a Shia. He was from the Ahl Sunnah. He was considered to be from amongst the Mu'tazilites. Within his exegesis, he explains the character and the identity of Imam al-Hassan. He says amongst the scholars there is kalam. There is word that Imam Hassan was seen as the son of Rasulullah. He says there is no doubt. I have evidence to this to prove that he was indeed the son of Rasulullah. Amongst the scholars is that they undermine this title of Imam al-Hassan. They say that the reason why he's seen as the son of the Holy Prophet is because of the deep affection that the Holy Prophet had towards him. He says, but there are 3 evidences to show that he was indeed the son of Rasulullah. Evidence number 1 is the event of Mubahila. What happens in Mubahila? Ta'alaw abna'ana wa abna'akum. Come, bring your sons and we will bring our sons. This is what the Holy Prophet said according to revelation to the Christians of Najran. They say the night when this verse was revealed, when the mubahala had been ascertained, had been decided, during that night, they were all in anticipation. Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, the father of Umar ibn Sa'ad, when he was there in the courthouse of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, he narrates this particular narration. He says, that night when the revelation was revealed, we were anticipating to be alongside the Holy Prophet. I was there standing alongside the Prophet himself when that revelation was given to him. We were all happy to be there alongside the Prophet, engaging in mubahala with the Christians of Najran. So that night, no one knew who was going to join the Holy Prophet, but we were all waiting in anticipation. We were excited. It said no one knew who would join the Holy Prophet of Islam. Except whom? Except Salman al-Farsi. Salman al-Farsi, Rasulullah comes to him the night before mubahala. He says, Ya Salman, prepare for me for mubahala tomorrow. Prepare for me a small mat. I said, Ya Rasulullah, what do you need the small mat for? He said, Salman, digga, we need to go to mubahala. We'll need somewhere to sit. He says, but a small mat? How many people are you intending to take for this mubahala? He says, Salman, when you take the small mat, place it under a tree. He says, what for? He said, we'll need shade from the sun. He said, Ya Rasulullah, do we not need, for example, isn't mubahala better under the skies, under the open sky? He says, Sahih, but Salman, you have to understand, I will have children with me. And I don't want to disturb them from the heat of the sun. So go and place the small mat under the tree. Salman, out of all the companions, Salman knew exactly who will join Rasulullah. Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, he says to Muawiyah, he says, when we found out that Imam Hassan and Imam Husayn alongside Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhim ajma'een, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, were joining the Holy Prophet of Islam, wallah, that day we all envied these three personalities. Out of all of the different incidences, this is one that hit us the most. So you find that from this particular narration, Ibn Abil Hadid al-Mu'tazili proves that Imam Hassan as well as Imam al-Husayn were seen as the sons of the Holy Prophet of Islam. Secondly, when it comes to Nabi Isa alayhi salam, they say that Harun al-Rashid, he presents the same problem to Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim alayhi salam. Harun al-Rashid, he says, Yabna Rasulullah, how can you come forward and say that you are the abna of Rasulullah? Whereas a lineage is identified from the sons and not from the daughters. For you to come forward and say that I am from the lineage of Fulan ibn Fulan, it means that you are the sons of their sons. Yes? But you are not the sons of Rasulullah because you come from the lineage of Fatima al-Zahra, salamullahi alayha. So how can you come and say that you are from the abna of Rasulullah? Imam Musa alayhi salam replies, Imam al-Kadhim replies, he says, look at how Isa is identified according to the language of the Quran. When he speaks about the lineage of Ibrahim, he says from amongst the lineage of Ibrahim, the sons of Ibrahim is Isa, alongside Musa, alongside Ismail and Ishaq. How can Isa, for example, be from the sons of Ibrahim when he had no father? It was through his mother, Maryam, salamullahi alayha. So just as how Isa is from the lineage of Ibrahim through his mother, we come from the lineage of Rasulullah through our grandmother, Fatima al-Zahra, salamullahi alayha. So this was second evidence to show that Imam al-Hassan was the son of the Holy Prophet. The third evidence is the ayah of the Holy Quran. مَا كَانَ مُحَمَّدٌ أَبَا أَحَدٍ مِّن رِجَالِكُمْ. The ayah of the Quran, what does it say? It says, O you people, O you men, min rijalikum, O you men, Rasulullah is not your father. It's referring to the men. O you men, Prophet is not your father. So they use this ayah to prove that Imam Hassan and Imam al-Husayn cannot be the sons of Rasulullah. Ibn Abil Hadid al-Mu'tazili, he replies, this verse was revealed in relation to Zayd ibn Harith. Zayd ibn Harith was the adopted son of Rasulullah. In Islam, the position of a biological son is different from an adopted son. And the reason is because Zayd ibn Harith, he married Zainab bint Habash. Or Zainab, when he married Zainab, that particular marriage didn't work out. So they ended up in divorce. When they divorced, Zainab became the wife of Rasulullah. When she married Rasulullah, she became one of the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen. Here, the Quran came forward and said that an adopted son does not hold the same values from a fiqh perspective as your biological son. So when you go into the tafsir of this verse, that no men are considered to be, the Prophet is not considered to be the father of any of you from amongst the men, it is in relation to Zayd ibn Harith and not in relation to Imamain al-Hasanain. So from these three evidences, Ibn Abil Hadid al-Mu'tazili comes to the conclusion saying that there is no way that they come forward and they say that Imam Hassan as well as Imam al-Husayn are not considered to be the sons of Rasulullah. We have evidence to show otherwise. So in terms of his identity and his fadila, he is seen as the son of the Holy Prophet of Islam. We come to the second area of the discussion. In terms of his valor, in terms of his bravery. You know, there is misconception within the minds of the Muslims. They say Imam al-Hassan did not fight like Imam al-Husayn. Imam al-Husayn was the embodiment of courage and bravery because of what happened on the 10th of Muharram in the sands of Karbala. But Imam al-Hassan, he signed a peace treaty. When he signs the peace treaty, this is to show that he did not have courage, he did not show bravery. Baba, even Rasulullah signed a peace treaty with the people of Quraysh. Yes, Rasulullah knew that he was not able to win over the Quraysh, so he signs a peace treaty to expose them completely inside out. That's exactly what Imam Hassan alayhi salam did. He followed the sunnah of his grandfather Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. In terms of his bravery, one of the manifestations of his bravery was not that which was seen in the battlefield, but it was the bravery of the loyalty that he showed towards his father. Political activism was part and parcel of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. The loyalty that he demonstrates with his father was something that kind of highlighted his bravery in terms of his character. It identified that he was no doubt considered to be a brave person. Let me give you an example. They say that when Uthman ibn Affan became the caliph, he made a number of enemies amongst the companions of the Holy Prophet. From amongst them Ammar ibn Yasir, from amongst them, for example, Abu Dhar al-Ghafari. Abu Dhar al-Ghafari was a loud activist who spoke against Uthman ibn Affan. He would publicly come and he would shun Uthman. Uthman had enough of him. So what does he do? He exiles him. When he exiles him to a land which was known for idol worship and a land which was deprived of many benefits and bounties, they say that before or when he exiles him, he makes a public announcement. He comes to the people of Medina. He says that before or on the day when Abu Dhar is being exiled, no one is allowed to come and bid farewell to him. Anyone who comes and bids farewell to Abu Dhar, they will become enemies of the state. The day Abu Dhar is exiled and he leaves the city of Medina, who comes and bids farewell to him? They say Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam comes and he bids farewell publicly to Abu Dhar al-Ghafari. Alongside him Ammar. Alongside him, for example, his son, Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. Imam Hassan could have stayed home and said, you know what? There's no need for me to come and say goodbye to Abu Dhar al-Ghafari. He stands alongside his father, supporting him. Political activism was demonstrated in this particular way. He comes to Abu Dhar al-Ghafari and he shares a few words of consolation. He says, my uncle, they are scared of you. Allah is pleased with you. They are scared because they know that if you carry on the way you are, you will take away their dunya from them. And they are afraid of you because they know that they cannot take your deen away from you. He consoles Abu Dhar al-Ghafari, and then of course Abu Dhar al-Ghafari leaves. He goes into that abandoned land and he dies in that particular land. Second example of the political activism of Imam Hassan alayhi salam was again in the time of Uthman ibn Affan. Uthman, one of the biggest mistakes that he made, according to the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam in Nahj al-Balagha, was that he began misusing the public treasury. When he began using the public treasury for his own benefit, all of a sudden the members of the Banu Umayyah were coming into power. The likes of Marwan ibn Hakam, he came into Medina, he had a governmental position. Then you have, for example, Al-Ash'ath ibn al-Qais. Who's Ash'ath ibn al-Qais? Very interesting personality. Ash'ath ibn al-Qais, they say he was the governor of Azerbaijan under the rulership of Uthman. When Uthman passes away, yes, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam becomes the caliph, but he allows Ash'ath to continue to be the governor. He says to Ash'ath, he says, you are allowed to become the governor under one condition, that you do not misuse the public funds for your own benefits and desires. Look after the people. There are people who are needy. There are people with broken families. Use this wealth to support them, not your own self and your desire. Ash'ath doesn't listen. He carries on plundering the wealth. Imam alayhi salam, when he receives news that Ash'ath is plundering the wealth of Bayt al-Mal, he fires him immediately. Ash'ath was a victim of his own desire. Ash'ath was the one who stood alongside Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan in the battle of Siffin against Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Ash'ath ibn al-Qais, they say his daughter was Ju'da. Ju'da was the wife of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Ju'da was the one who poisoned Imam Hassan alayhi salam. They say that Muawiyah wanted to appoint Yazid as the caliph. But there was an issue. He couldn't appoint Yazid as a caliph. Why? Because part of the peace treaty was that Yazid was not to be given the khilafah. So Muawiyah comes to a conclusion that in order to bypass this particular loop, or to find a loophole of this particular condition, he needs to assassinate Imam al-Hasan. He buys the most strongest of poison that was available in the world. He comes to Ju'da. He says, Ju'da, here's 100,000 dirhams. Administer this poison to your husband. Ju'da then takes the wealth and she poisons Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Just as how her father was a victim of the pleasures of dunya, she becomes a victim of the pleasures of dunya as well. In terms of Ash'ath ibn al-Qais, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he says that he is a munafiq, the son of a kafir. La'natul la'inin. Yes, these are harsh words that was ascribed to Ash'ath ibn al-Qais. In the time of in the time of Uthman ibn Affan, these characters, they came into power. When they came into power, all of a sudden the people were now becoming victims of the misuse of the funds of Bayt al-Mal, and they had enough. So they all congregated outside the palace of Uthman and they began protesting. They say that the situation had become so bad that people from Egypt came to Medina to protest outside the palace of Uthman ibn Affan. That's how much nepotism and favoritism existed in his time. When the situation became dire, what does Uthman do? Ya Ali madad. He says, Ya Ali, come and help me. I need your help. Imam Ali alayhi salam, when he found that Uthman is seeking help, now he was in a very, very awkward position, because he couldn't show help towards Uthman openly, nor could he could not show support openly to Uthman, and he could not tell the people that he was not showing support to Uthman either. As in, he couldn't be pro, he couldn't be con Uthman either. Why? Because if he showed support, the people would have seen that he was supporting an oppressive caliph. If he had not shown support, they would have said, the loud activists would have said that he is responsible for the murder of Uthman ibn Affan, that he is the one who executed Uthman. That's exactly what happened. The Battle of Jamal takes place because they blamed Imam alayhi salam murdering Uthman ibn Affan. So when help is asked for, Imam alayhi salam sends help. He sends Imam al-Hassan to break the lines of the protesters, to go stand in the front lines and to protect Uthman at all costs. No one was to enter the palace of Uthman. They created a barricade. No food was to come in, no water was to come in, no one was to come out, except Imam Hassan alayhi salam. He would come, he would offer water, he would come, he would bring food for Uthman. Imam al-Hassan, showing loyalty to his father, protected Uthman ibn Affan. Uthman ibn Affan, his own people turned against him, but the Shia of Ali alayhi salam showed support and protected Uthman ibn Affan. Support not in the sense that he favored Uthman and of course was happy with his behavior. Listen to the words of Imam alayhi salam. Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. He says, I was in between two extremes. In the one extreme, I saw the abuse of Uthman when it came to Bayt al-Mal. And I sympathized with the people for their grievances. But at the same time, what the people were doing was wrong because they wanted to kill Uthman. He said, I did not want any bloodshed to take place. There was a middle position that could have been acquired without Uthman being murdered. But then Uthman was being murdered, Uthman was murdered, and of course the Battle of Jamal then proceeds in the coming years. So from the second area, Imam al-Hassan shows loyalty in terms of political activism by following the orders of his father, protecting Uthman ibn Affan. Thirdly, when it came to the Battle of Jamal, they said that when the Battle of Jamal commenced, there weren't many supporters that the Imam had. The Imam had, for example, supporters in Basra. But that was it. So the Imam sends help to Kufa and he asks the people of Kufa to come and help him. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, the governor of Kufa, he refuses to help the Imam and he makes a public announcement to the people of Kufa. Do not show support to Ali ibn Abi Talib. The Imam, when he sees that there is no support, he sends Imam Hassan alayhi salam. He says, go and seek help from the people of Kufa. Imam enters the city of Kufa. This was, of course, all before the Imam migrates to Kufa. Imam Hassan goes to the city of Kufa and he delivers a very powerful, moving sermon. A sermon so powerful that in a single sitting, 7,000 to 10,000 men joined the army of Imam alayhi salam. Imam then uses this army and he fights the opposition in the Battle of Jamal. So from this second area, you realize that the Imam alayhi salam, Imam Hassan, he shows loyalty and he shows activism towards the movement of his father, Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Now we come I need a louder salawat. After so many months we're gathering. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Ya Ali. Thirdly, and the final area of our discussion is when it comes to Karbala. You find that Karbala was something that was prophesied at the time of the Holy Prophet of Islam. Amir al-Mu'mineen knew about it. Imam Hassan knew about it. They knew the power of Karbala. They knew the profundity of Karbala. They wanted to be alongside Imam al-Husayn, but they knew that they would not be there alongside him. So what did they do? They made sure that their sons and their daughters were there in Karbala. Amir al-Mu'mineen, what does he do? He comes to his brother Aqil. He says, Ya Aqil, find me a woman who will give me children who are considered to be warriors. Aqil says, there is a woman from the tribe of Al-Kilabiyya, Fatima bint Huzam al-Kilabi. Her forefathers, she comes from a lineage of soldiers. She will give you brave sons. Wallah, Fatima, Ummul Baneen, Salamullahi alayha, she gives 4 sons to the Imam alayhi salam. Abbas, Ja'far, Abdullah, Uthman, all of them gave their lives for the Imam alayhi salam on the 10th of Muharram. What does Imam Husayn, Imam Hassan alayhi salam do? Imam Hassan follows the same sunnah. He marries Ramla. Ramla gives him 2 boys who both give their lives for Imam Husayn alayhi salam, representing Imam Hassan salawatullahi wa salam. Imam Hassan, Qasim wasn't the only son of Imam Hassan alayhi salam on the 10th of Muharram. Imam Hassan made sure 3 of his sons gave their lives for Imam Husayn alayhi salam. 2 of them from Ramla, 1 of them from a different wife. The first son that gave his life for Imam al-Husayn, his name was Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr was just the kunya, it was just the title. The name of this child, the name of this youth was Abdullah al-Akbar. They say in the Maqatil that Abdullah al-Akbar, he enters the battlefield. When he enters the battlefield, he begins to recite words of poetry. He attacks, he fights, he kills many, and then they overpower him and they kill him. Abdullah al-Akbar was the older brother of Qasim. Then Imam Husayn alayhi salam takes his body and he brings them back to the tents of the women. Then you have the second son. The second son is Abdullah al-Asghar. He was only 11 years of age. And wallah, his musibah is a very heartful musibah for us. It makes our hearts heavy when we hear his musibah. They say that when Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam was sitting or was one lying and there were no companions around him, he was surrounded by his enemies. Abdullah al-Asghar, what does he see? He sees his uncle in this particular state. He runs out from the tents and he runs towards his uncle, Abi Abdullah. Zainab tries to get hold of him, but he escapes Zainab and he runs towards Imam al-Husayn. He approaches the Imam, he reaches the Imam, he embraces Abi Abdullah. He places his face, his cheek on the chest of Abi Abdullah. Now remember, the Imam is surrounded by his enemies. A man by the name of Bahar ibn Ka'ab, he approaches Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam, he takes his sword, he raises his sword, and he points it towards this child and he strikes this child. Abdullah al-Asghar, what does he do? He lifts his arm to defend himself, and the sword strikes him in his arm and it severs his arm. He turns to his uncle and he says to his uncle, he says, Ya Abu Abdullah, the pain, I cannot bear this pain. Imam alayhi salam turns to his son Abdullah, he says, Oh my son, wait a few moments, have sabr, for indeed you will see your father and soon your grandfather Rasulullah. A man, we all know who this man is. He takes out an arrow and he aims it towards Abdullah al-Asghar. They say that Harmala ibn Kahil shoots this arrow and it pierces the body of Abdullah. Abdullah dies in the laps of Abi Abdullah alayhi salam. Then you have the musibah of Qasim. Tonight is the night of Qasim. It reminds of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. They say that when Imam al-Husayn was carrying the body of Qasim back to the tents of the women, he carries the body of Qasim, he enters the tents and he places the body alongside the body of Ali al-Akbar. Then he sits between the body of Ali and the body of Qasim. Then he begins to cry. Then he begins to say, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Ya Allah, bear witness, they have begun killing my children. Ya Allah, bear witness of their actions. The poet, what does he say? He says that the Imam begins to lament, he begins to cry, he begins to mourn. But he's not the only one who wants to cry and mourn over the bodies of Ali and Qasim. The ladies were waiting outside. They were waiting for Abu Abdullah to finish and for him to leave the tents. None of them had it in themselves to come and tell Abu Abdullah, leave, we want to see the bodies of our sons. They say that Zainab enters the tent. She says, Oh my brother, Ibn Rasulullah, Ramla is waiting to see the body of Qasim. Layla is waiting to see the body of Ali. Abu Abdullah, he gets up and he leaves. They say that Ramla enters the tent. She sees the body of her son Qasim buried under the arrows. His body was ripped into pieces. She comes towards her body, his body. She says, Ya Bunayya Ya Qasim, never had I thought. She says, Ya Qasim, I wish that you one day would bury me. Never had I thought that I would be the one to bury you. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Because it is Laylatul Jum'ah, allow us to recite Surah Al-Fatiha for all our marhumin, inshallah. The best gift for them is the recitation of Al-Fatiha, Surah Al-Mubarakat Al-Fatiha.